All right, financial algebra all stars. Wonderful. Average daily balance is what we're going to be looking at. We've seen credit card statements. We've actually calculated a bit of average daily balance, but now we're going to kind of let Excel take over and actually give us a bunch of great information. We see Mark Gillies transactions seen here. I'll keep referencing this as we move forward, but you may want to pause the video, screenshot this, and I'll keep referencing this as we move forward. Sound good? So in here, there's some error in the bill. We're being asked to get the average daily balance, finance charge, available credit, and new balance amounts because they're not filled in, unfortunately. What is Mark's average daily balance? Let's start there. Well, some things of note from this statement are how we have 31 days in the billing cycle. This will be a pretty important part when we set these up on Excel. We see that we have a few transactions. We have our previous balance. They've already given respect to the credit, trying to pay off some of this. And that should be good enough for us to start. So those things are going to be important here. Let's take this back to Excel, where this is going to be how I set up my days. Because remember, when we were talking average daily balance, we would have a price and then the number of days that our balance was that amount. And then, we had the days that were remaining. And then eventually we kind of divided all of this by 30 or 31. In this case, our billing cycle is 31, which is fine. So I'm actually starting on day 27. And this is in May. So remember that our billing cycle ends on the 27th in June. So the billing date is 26. So I went back to May 27th. And then I denoted how on May 31st, there was that transaction from Linda's Art Shop. On June 12th, the transaction for Art Signs Inc. on the 18th, the payment on the 20th, Silver Art Corp, and then on the June 27th, that's when the new cycle starts. So we're kind of starting fresh then. The original previous balance, you got to give respect to that. So I'm typing in that as 800, which again carries over from the previous month. So we're just reiterating that. And then I'm taking into account what changed as we went into the 31st. So remember, we had that $251 purchase from Linda's Art Shop. So I'm saying that I'm taking the previous amount, B2, and just adding on $251. So notice I'm letting Excel do the math for me of calculating all of this. Sound good, right? Less for us to do. We have the transaction adding on 72.5. So again, take the previous B3, add on 72.5. Keep that going. We see we have that credit of $200. So notice I'm deducting that. That's a big deal, deducting it. We see that there's a final transaction on June 20th for $18.50. And there we go. So we have the balances in those increments. So now it's up to us to find the difference between those days, because that's going to help us get the average daily balance, because we're kind of seeing how many days we have each of those balances set. So how we can do this, we can find our difference in the days. If you do this correctly, you should have your dates kind of mapped out this way. And you can set up a formula that takes the difference of those dates. And you may want to try this real quick if you want to match up with what I'm doing. But I'm taking the difference in days between the 31st and 27th, because on the 31st, again, I have that payment for art. So that's saying there's a difference there 4 days. And if I keep measuring these differences all the way down, what might be helpful is if you just start with this equation and then just click and drag the bottom right and fill it down. Eventually, we see that we have 31 days in the cycle, which matches the credit statement or credit card statement. So that's what we're aiming for. Recall that if we're getting the average daily balance, we're taking the balance, multiplying it by the number of days it was that balance. We're adding all of those up and then dividing by the 31. So what I'm going to do over here is pretty much take that multiplication of the balance times the difference of days, have that set equal, and then just keep calculating that down. So if you're not too sure how this is done, I'm saying that I want to multiply B2, my balance, with the number of days that was the difference, putting equal sign to show it's an equation, and then clicking and dragging to make sure it fills down. And if I scoot this over, I see that my total balance is going to be that 30,994. But how exactly do I get the average daily balance now? Hopefully you're saying if we divide. So remember, 31 was the number of days in the cycle. The top part was like the very long and kind of drawn out balances multiplying by the number of days it was that balance. So that's what we got there. So our average daily balance is seen here, $999.81. There we go. We're also being asked to find the finance charge. So if we're going for the finance charge, we know that our rate is 0.015. So if we set this, multiply it by 0.015, we see that our finance charge is $15. So that was part B. So that part's done. We're then finding, what else are we finding? We're finding the new balance. So we can do this just by thinking out like how it's changing over time, because we know that this is starting at 800, but then we're getting rid of the 200. We're adding on the 15. And then we're also adding on the 342. Remember, 342, as mentioned on the credit card statement, was how much the new balances came to. So that gets us a new balance of $957. If we are finding out the available credit, well, how much credit did we have initially? We said that the available credit was, well, sorry, the beginning credit was 6,000. But now we're taking the difference because we're trying to find out how much is left. So deduct 957. We see our available credits, $5,000.43. The final question asks if Mark's finance charge would have been lower because the average daily balance is a few days before. This would actually lower the finance charge because we see that the average daily balance would be lower because, you know, if you pay off something earlier, you're not owing as much as time goes on. So if you pay off the balance a little bit earlier, that lowers the balance and potentially your finance charge. So I'll make a note of that. Mark paid earlier, the average daily balance would be lower. So if Mark coughed up the $200 just a few days earlier, that would lower our finance charge. Pretty cool. I hope that this video was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.